Hello and welcome back to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. My name is Kyle Boone, and with me, as always, Mr. Adam Finkelstein of 247 Sports Lore, Director of Scouting. And Mr. Finkelstein, we are 1 week out from the 2024 NBA Draft. Today, we're going to bang out two episodes. The first, which you are listening to now, is going to hit on our three favorite players from the 2024 NBA Draft. That is not necessarily our top three players on our big board, but three players who we have kind of staked our name to. We feel like maybe we're higher on than others. And then we're going to get into another episode later talking about our bold predictions. And boy, I've got some spice for you. I hope you are ready, Mr. Finkelstein. You have the antidote to my spice.
I'd be surprised because you are, as I try and document on every show, the nicest man in America. So I just, I expect nothing but more niceness from you. So
it's not mean, but I tried to go a little salty, get a little spicy, and try and make some bold predictions. Yeah, it's out of my comfort zone, but I think it'll be fun. Let's start here with our three favorite players from the 2024 draft.
Are we going one by one, or how are we doing this?
I figure we can just alternate. So I will go, and then you will go. I have three. You have three. I have seen your list. I have seen that we do not have any overlapping players, which is great. So we're going to talk about six players on this episode. Number one, if you've been following this series leading up to the draft, you know that number one for me, Stephon Castle. It's so funny, Fink, because we did a episode sometime last summer talking about who my big board was and what my top 10 was. And Stephon Castle, I believe, was number 5 on my big board. And at the time, you were perplexed. And at the time, I was also perplexed because I thought, well,
receipts.
Yeah, well, at the time I thought, okay, he's got really good size, good defense, and I thought he could be a kind of a playmaking guard at the NBA level. It didn't necessarily play out in the way that I thought it would last season at UConn. I thought he would end up being like one of the top couple options for UConn and be more of a playmaker. That wasn't the case, and yet here we are with a week until the draft, and Stephon Castle looks like he could end up going, somewhere in the top 5 of this draft. I love his potential in the NBA as a combo guard who can play defense. I'm very high on him, and so he has been kind of the guy that I've been riding with throughout this draft process.
Yeah, you've made your case for him in the past, and I like it. As I know, you've expressed some optimism that he can grow into a lead guard. I'm kind of less in that camp. I think it's been misrepresented a little bit, but listen, you can go back and watch some of the previous shows. We've been down this rabbit hole. For me, it's the shooting. Like, does he ever figure the shooting out? I think that's the part we haven't necessarily talked about. I'll say this. There was less of a mental block this year at UConn than I expected. I had seen some stuff in the grassroots circuit. Like, I watched this guy miss like 8 free throws in a row once, and just like watch like him like sweating as this happened. And I was like, oh geez, this could become like a mental thing. But I think he got over that. Like, he stuck with his shot all year at UConn. He never lost confidence in it, and the willingness to take it just as important as the ability to knock him down. He's got to get better with that. But it never became a mental thing like I was concerned it would. So I think that was certainly a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I still feel like there's room to grow. Like, watching him play, I didn't feel like he shot the ball with confidence. And in fact, there were times throughout the season where, he's wide open on the perimeter and just turns down a shot. And I think in time, if he's able to shoot those shots consistently with confidence, then I think we could be talking about the best player in the draft. I really believe that. And I don't have him ranked as the number 1 player in this class. I have him number 2. But someone who I've been consistently high on, Stephon Castle, one of my 3 my guys in this class. Adam Finkelstein, name your first my guy of this class.
Certainly the prospect that I am higher on than the consensus at this point is Ron Holland. It's maybe some confirmation bias because I did rank him as the top overall high school recruit in the country a year ago. And candidly, he's done nothing but improve since then. So I think a lot of people have dug in, and rightfully so, to some of the inefficient shooting numbers, some of the inefficient assist to turnover ratios. But what I don't think we're talking enough about is this is a big wing, and some of the measurements have fluctuated over the years. But even at 6'7", this is a pretty big wing who may be bigger than that, who is very athletic and ultra competitive. When we talk about the shooting, I don't think he is a total non-shooter. I think the ball comes off his hand fine. I think we've seen some progression in that area. He's never been this dynamic half-court creator. That's not what you're going to get with him. But you've got somebody who can get downhill, who can thrive in transition. And if he can get to the point where he can make open spot-up shots, you're going to have to guard him on the weak side offensively. And I do think he's got the potential to be a very good defensive player, not just because of his physical tools, but because of his mentality. And in this draft, where I don't know that there is many, if any at all, like alpha type offensive talents, I think we're just over analyzing Ron Holland a little bit too much. Like, give me that athletic, hyper competitive, two-way wing with good size. And if he slips out of the lottery, I think that's misinformed. I mean, to me, he would be someone I started to think about in the top half of the lottery. I have a much higher opinion of Ron Holland than most do.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. Slipping out of the top 10 or even out of the lottery sounds insane. And I think for listeners here, obviously you're watching, you're a diehard, you're following the draft just as closely as we are. The backstory behind this, of course, is Finkelstein is kind of planting his flag here on Holland, who I would say behind the scenes has, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Fink. There's been kind of a separation maybe over the last couple of weeks where Modest Buzelis, his G League Ignite teammate, has risen up draft boards. You're seeing him mocked like somewhere between, as high as like number 5 to the Pistons.
Sometimes higher. Yeah. I think he worked out for Atlanta.
Higher. Yes. And Holland has, like, consistently, from what I've been tracking, maybe slipped just a little bit. And I don't know if necessarily his draft stock is falling, but I think his range and where he could go has been a little bit more volatile, especially compared to Buzelis. So as someone who I think Holland could realistically drop out of the top 10, I'm with you on that. I think we've been in lockstep. I believe Ron Holland is a top 10 prospect in this class. It's crazy to think that he could fall out of the top 10. And oh, by the way, at the combine, he was asked, kind of like, what do you think about this class being wide open and not having a consensus number 1? And he was kind of in disbelief about it. And I like the way he handled it too, because he's like, kind of like, I'm that dude, and I'm not sure I'd take him with the number 1 pick. In fact, I would not take him with the number 1 pick, but I like the way that he carries himself. I'm a sucker for guys who are very confident and have a strong belief and conviction in themselves. So Ron Holland, I'm with you. I'll hop on the Ron Holland train. I believe he is a player who's being slept on and ended up, both of us, I think, were higher on him than the consensus. Curious to see where he lands on draft night. Yep. My second player.
Yeah, who you got?
From my top 3 favorite players from this 2024 draft. It's Cody Williams from Colorado. This has been a long draft process, and I feel like throughout this process, Cody Williams has gone from, like, do you remember, it feels like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about, like, oh, Cody Williams could end up being the number 1 pick in the 2024 draft. And now it's like, Cody Williams, he might slip out of the top 10.
Yeah,
I'm more of the belief that Cody Williams is closer to number 1 than to number 10.
That's representative, I think, of what the intel is saying now too. I'm a little more skeptical, but I think the point that you're making is consistent with what I'm hearing in the draft community right now as well.
Yeah, and I think we probably just hyperanalyze these things because we see the numbers, we look at the data, we watch the film, and we see things. And as time progresses, we maybe overanalyze, some of the things we see and some of the things we hear. But in a nutshell, I mean, great length, great defense. Someone who I think is committed to being a consistent winner, who's committed to developing his game. A really good catch and shoot weapon, a jump shooter. can improve, I think, overall. And obviously, his brother being an all-star in the NBA helps his case, I think, in that, the progression that Jalen Williams made at Santa Clara, now to the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think is a really nice blueprint for him and his potential progression. There's a lot of untapped potential there with Cody Williams, a lot of excitement. And so, yeah, I ended up having him ranked much, much higher in our final consensus big board rankings than the rest of you guys. And
Where'd you have him?
I had him ranked at number 6.
Okay.
And so I think he ended up falling somewhere in like the 10 to 12 range.
Yeah.
And so we'll see.
He's gonna get drafted. I think there's a very good chance he gets drafted closer to 6 than 12.
Yeah. I think that's definitely possible. So someone to keep an eye on. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Were you?
No, it's just that's someone who I think I ended up being higher on, who I wasn't necessarily higher on throughout the entire process, but as things kind of played out, as after the combine, kind of talking with people, it was one of those like, oh yeah, we maybe just be overthinking the Cody Williams thing.
He's definitely one of the more toolsy prospects in this class, but to me,
Definitely.
he's always been more of an idea than a reality. And that's not to say that he won't hit. I just think there is a wide range of potential outcomes here, and certainly the upside is significant. But there are, there are bust outcomes within the realm of possibility too, because the overall track record of production is not that of a guy who gets picked in the top half of the lottery, but the tools are. So those are. It's an interesting risk reward relationship, and I think it may come down, like some other prospects like Topic and others who are, it may come down to an executive who can afford to take a swing and miss, because this is a high risk, high reward prospect, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Bill Ryder at the NBA Draft Combine, by the way, wrote about Bronny James, and one of the videos that he made for CBS that went viral was basically like him realizing that Bronny James is short. Because I think in your mind you see Bronny James and you're like, oh, he's 6'6", combo guard. LeBron's son, he's probably physically very intimidating. And he's, he measured in at like around 6'2", and he just looked small compared to. Yeah. So, and he looks small, obviously, compared to some of the other guys on the court. My initial, like Ryder-esque observation from the combine was Cody Williams looks so skinny, like super tall. Love the tools. He's very, very long wingspan, long standing reach, but definitely needs to add some weight to his frame, some muscle and some physicality to his game. And I think projecting him long term, obviously, you're going to hope that he's going to be able to add those things. He spent just one season in college, so there's some seasoning that's going to happen. But I think for an NBA team that takes him, you have to hope that you can be patient with him. And someone who I think is going to make that pick has to have probably a longer leash than some other GMs, because I don't think he's necessarily a plug and play type prospect. Like you can get with a Dalton Connect or a Donovan Kling and someone else who's potentially going to go in the top 10.
Yeah.
I'll throw it to you for your second of 3, my guys, in this class. You said Ron Holland was your first one. Your second is?
Devin Carter of Providence College, one of my guys in this draft. And I will say this does not sound like as much of a hot take as it did a few weeks ago, because I think a lot of people are starting to really dig in and understand what makes Devin Carter pretty rare, if not unique, in this draft class. There's a common denominator for me in the players in this group that I am higher on than most, and that's competitiveness. And I think Devin Carter is one of the truly elite competitors in this class. And he's also now proven to be one of the best athletes in this class. I think people didn't necessarily realize the totality of his athleticism during the course of the season. But given some of those measurements at the combine, that is now irrefutable, shall we say? And my history with Devin Carter goes back many years. In fact, this is a little bit of a humble brag for me, Boone, because I remember it was 2020-21 Brewster Academy. Modest Buzelis was on that team, and I went up to watch them. They were working out, and I was like the only one allowed to be in the gym, but I was up like the top of the bleachers. So, COVID, especially in the Northeast, like you couldn't get near anybody. So I was elevated. I just remember watching, and at the time I texted the coach because we couldn't talk. Like I could see him in one court side of the court. He texted me. And I was like, am I crazy to think Devin Carter's your best guy on this team? And at the time, that was not the perception. Like he wasn't ranked at the time. I was at ESPN back then. We ended up ranking him because of what I saw. And then, South Carolina, he exceeded most people's expectations, went to Providence, and then this year really became one of the true stars of college basketball. So what I think the NBA role is just when you have someone who is athletic, hyper competitive, and again, one of the better defenders in this class, and proven, like his on and off the ball, like this guy is ready to come in and defend right away. You're going to have a role, and you're going to have a valuable role you're going to get on the court. And if the shooting sticks, like the shooting numbers were much better this year, I'm not sure I buy it to the extent that the shooting looked this year, because he had such freedom, such volume, and the confidence that comes along with that. But if the shooting proves to be trustworthy, I think that's going to unlock a whole lot of positive outcomes. Like, listen, I don't expect him to be an offensive alpha at the NBA level, but I think elite competitor, elite athlete, elite defender, and has enough offensive game where he's going to be able to put up like very solid numbers in a secondary role. I think that would be what I anticipate for him. So although the consensus on him has certainly risen in the last few weeks, this is someone who is not only in my top 10, but has been in there for quite a while now.
Yeah, I like that. He's also finished inside my top 10. Devin Carter, someone who we both agree on. Fink, I have a comp for you for Devin Carter. And
you had a good one recently, but you got another one?
George Hill was my comp. And I'm curious what you think, because shooting wise, I think it might work out. But in terms of just his playmaking ability, what he can be as kind of a point guard or dynamic combo guard, and then long.
I like someone who can defend at a high level. You went Drew Holiday last week, and I was like, oh, that's a good one. So I think somewhere in between those guys, I think you're spot on. There's a little bit of both, but yeah, there's certainly some Drew Holiday there too, because listen, I think he was the alpha out of necessity at Providence this year, especially when Bryce Hopkins went down. I don't think this is someone who needs the ball in his hands all the time to be able to impact the game, and whether it's both of those comps, I think, reflect that. But Drew Holiday is someone who, especially given the role he played on now an NBA champion, I think is going to resonate with people.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. My last guy here, third guy on my guys list, and then I'll throw it over to you. Jared McCain. We made the case last week, talked a little bit about the best shooters in this draft class. I believe Jared McCain is the best shooter in this draft class. The ability for him to get square quickly, to fire shots off of movement, off of screens, I think is going to make him a really valuable player in the NBA. He's going to have a really dynamic role as a shooter, and I think because of the way that he's able to make plays, the way that he's able to engage on defense, like he is going to have a significant role in the NBA. And I think anywhere in the teens is where he ends up probably getting picked. It's going to end up being a really good value. Like maybe not a very sexy or appealing pick, but someone who, if he slips to, the Miami Heat in the teens, people are going to be like, oh, well, why did we let this happen? Because I think he's just, just a really fantastic shooter. I think he ends up being the best shooter in the draft. So I like Jared McCain. I think I ended up being higher on him than some of the others.
Can I give a shout out here? Because I got a colleague who I've got to recognize. Isaac Trotter was talking up Jared McCain as a potential lottery pick mid-season. And I, at the time, was like, I don't know, man. And here's why. He's the exception to the rule. He's an undersized combo guard, not an elite athlete, but he's super skilled, incredibly high character, and completely dedicated to the process of being the best basketball player possible. And I think that gets lost in the fact that he's a social media celebrity as well. So you hear like oh, well, how much does he love it? It's like almost the correlation I would make is almost like the guys who used to rap, and people would be like, oh, he's rapping. How much does he love basketball? It's like Jared McCain's on TikTok. How much does he love basketball? Let me tell you, he loves basketball enough to exceed everyone's expectations at every step along the way, because this is not from an athletic standpoint, from a measurement standpoint, this is not a prototypical lottery pick. But to his credit, everything you just said is 100% right. And I agree with you. I mean, Jared McCain, I think, is going to be a pro for 10 plus years just because of his mentality and his approach and his ability to continue to get better and be a gamer too. Like when the lights come on, he is not afraid.
Yeah. He's on TikTok. He's one of the only follows I have on TikTok. And, I think when you say like he's a TikTok star, you just assume that he's kind of an egghead. But he's very curious. He's very thoughtful, very compassionate. And I enjoyed kind of listening to him talk at the NBA draft combine, like just someone who is very curious about the world and very inquisitive, someone who wants to get better. And you can tell like he's a very genuine person, and maybe he puts on a good show. But I'm buying all of the Jared McCain stock. I believe in him, and
he's real.
Yeah.
I think to your point, like people think the TikTok guy is like a show, but no, I think that's who he is. And when you talk to people around him, they're like, no, that's who he is. There's an authenticity about him that I think is counterintuitive if you're only seeing him on TikTok.
For sure. Yes. Let's go to your final my guy here. Your third and final my guy of this class.
Yeah. So the third guy I like the most is Tidjane Salaün.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Great.
Yes, sir.
We're working on getting that right for draft night. Here's why. Again, I'm betting on competitiveness in this draft, where I don't see anyone who is right now trending towards a star. I want the best competitors. I want the guys who I believe are going to continue to work and not get bored by the grind is an overused word, but we're talking about committing themselves to this year in and year out for the next 15 years. And the other thing I like with Salaün is just the body in and of itself. I had an NBA scout at the combine who compared this draft to 2013. And what this scout said to me was, what we all missed that year is we should have invested in the player with the highest motor and the player with the best body type, that obviously being Giannis. Yep. Then the scout said to me, I think Salaün is that player in this class. He's not saying Salaün is going to be Giannis. He's saying he's cut from a similar cloth in terms of elite physical tools and an elite motor on top of it. So again, that's an overlap that I am buying into. And just like you said for Castle, if the shot, or just say skill in general, if that ever hits, this guy's going to make it in a big, big way. So that's why Tidjane Salaün is one of my three guys in this draft.
Nailed it. I've been watching some Salaün tape this week, just as we finished up our kind of prospect rankings and our capsules. Man, I love watching him play. He's such a smart cutter, and the way that he finishes around the basket is so hilarious to me, in that he's just a chaotic player. Like, he throws down dunks with authority. He does, like, the Derek Lively throw his feet up like as high as he possibly can, kind of like the old Shaq move.
That's the old Shaq. Yeah.
The Shaq finishing move. And then he'll come down with one hand just like hanging on it, just like a total goofball. I think it's interesting to see kind of where he ends up landing. Victor Wembanyama, who's obviously French as well, spoke very highly about him earlier this year. The Spurs obviously pick at number 4 and number 8. It talked about like his work ethic, his belief in like Salaün has the work ethic to become the best version of himself. So, it sounds like
denominator. I'm picking the workers and the competitors. Those are the guys I'm betting on, because there's no one who screams like no-brainer star. And in the absence of that, give me the guys who are gonna not get bored by the process of improving themselves year in and year out.
Yeah. So I think that's encouraging. It's encouraging that the rookie of the year Mr. Wimby himself backs you up on that and believes as well. So I love Tidjane Salaün in this class. You can, of course, check out our final top 75 prospect rankings on CBSSports.com. Now we included Adam Finkelstein, Isaac Trotter, Travis Branham, Cameron Salerno, Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander, David Cobb, the whole team input their own rankings. We combined it for a consensus final rankings. Lots of fun stuff there, so check that out. That's going to do it for this episode. Stick around on the channel, and we will have a bold predictions coming up here real soon. Like, subscribe, do whatever you do on the podcast channel, on the YouTube channel. Follow CBS Sports College Basketball, and we'll see you again here real soon. Take care.